Chapter 1, Learning to See. God is gracious. Titus 2:11. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people. Blood shots. That's what my daughter, at 7 years old, called blood work. In the back seat, she and her brother compared who had had the most tubes collected that day as I navigated our minivan out of the parking lot of the Specialty Care Center. We followed the winding business road past an ice hockey rink, preschool, and restaurants to the stoplight. As I waited for the light to turn green, I stared across the highway at the apartment complex. To the left, tucked out of sight, was our first apartment, the place my husband and I spent our wedding night. 15 years earlier, Scott had carried me over the threshold at twilight, streaks of color painting the July sky above us. It was a beautiful night for giddy newlyweds intoxicated by love. 10 months later, we carried our newborn son across the same threshold in a baby carrier. Marriage and parenting came together for us, part of the same package, one that delivered heights of joy and depths of grief that we could only have imagined that first night. Instead of traveling further down memory lane, I turned right, veering away from our honeymoon year and into the present. Matthew 6:34 came to mind. Each day has enough trouble of its own. I had memorized the verse as a child, and it was certainly true of the day ahead of me. I had 2 children in the car and 3 more waiting for me to come home. There was the 40-minute drive, followed by oatmeal-crusted bowls, a mountain of laundry, and homeschool lessons waiting for me on the other side. It had been 7 years since 3 of our children had been diagnosed with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Yet moments like these, while driving in the car, or preparing a meal, or jogging, or taking a shower, are an invitation to pause, to step out of the minutes and see the days and the years, to see the connectedness of past and present, places and people, and our still unfolding stories, and how God's sovereign hand was weaving them all into His story for His glory. As I looked back, I could see how far we'd come. In those early days after diagnosis, each blood draw was a matter for prayer. I would text friends the night before saying, "Please pray, it's a lab day." No rhyme intended. My friends would pray, and my children knew they were being prayed for, and God wove grace into that part of their story, our story. The phlebotomist finding the vein on the first stick was grace. A child gripping my hand instead of throwing a tantrum was grace. A child singing the ABCs and Jesus loves me was grace. It was abundant grace, supplied repeatedly until today was a win, a no tears day, an in and out day, a how many tubes did you get day, a grace day. Your hard is your suffering. I don't know what your hard is. Maybe you're single and you want to be married. Maybe you just found out that your mom has cancer. Maybe your husband has been cheating on you. Maybe your baby is in the NICU. Whatever it is, your hard is your suffering. Christian writer Elizabeth Elliot's definition from her book, Suffering is Never for Nothing, sums it up well. Suffering is having what you don't want or wanting what you don't have. Our family's primary suffering, the thing we have that we wish we didn't, is a life-threatening condition that impacts 3 of our children. But over the years, it's taken other forms, including transitions in and out of full-time ministry, pregnancy complications, unemployment and financial pressures, additional health challenges, and more. What's your suffering? Maybe you don't want vertigo, but your head spins when you sit up in the morning. You want a vacation, but you can't afford one. You wish your child didn't have food allergies, but she has an anaphylactic reaction to peanuts. You want a closer relationship with your son, but he resists your efforts and you don't know how to reach him. We don't want what we have. We want what we don't have. That is our suffering. That is our hard. We know it like the backs of our hands. My question is, in our hard, can we see God's grace?